I strongly feel like as AI continues to develop, what's actually going to happen is it's going to boomerang back and it's going to remind us of what it means to be human and what art means to be created by human.
Yeah.
So the more that AI continues to get better, the more we're going to continue to look back at ourselves, and you're going to start to maybe see art get to new heights.
Welcome to Innovate or Evaporate, the podcast where we explore the relentless pace of change and the innovators who drive it. Each episode, we dive deep into breakthrough ideas, unexpected journeys, and the fearless pioneers pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Today's guest is Ashton Gleckman, documentary filmmaker, composer, and creative force behind the 8-part History Channel series Kennedy and the upcoming film The Quiet Village. Ashton's story is wild. From dropping out of high school to interning for Hans Zimmer to independently producing Emmy-caliber documentaries right here from Indiana, all before the age of 25. We cover his journey from rock and roll kid to orchestral storyteller and how he's bringing forgotten moments of history back into the light with bold research, emotional insight, and stunning production. If you're ready for a story about curiosity, courage, and creating art with purpose, stay tuned, because it's Innovate or Evaporate.
Welcome back to Innovate or Evaporate, where we explore the relentless pace of change and the innovators who drive it. Today, we are joined by Ashton Gleckman, director and composer of the landmark History Channel docuseries Kennedy. Ashton is a true logistical and creative innovator who has mastered the art of the epic. I love that. The art of the epic. Historical storytelling, having successfully developed, directed, and sold a major 8-part series at a remarkably young age. Ashton, welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I am so fired up for this conversation on multiple levels. For all of our listeners out there, this is going to be an episode, I think, that you're going to want to share with other parents, right, whose kids in high school have these dreams and aspirations, or even in college, who have aspirations, the democratization of technology with AI and all those kinds of fun things happening. And just the creative economy in general, I think, is fascinating and a massive opportunity.
Yeah.
You are going to win Emmys.
Oh, no.
You're going to win Grammys. You're going to win Oscars. I can feel it right now. I've told you this before. I believe that with every fiber of my body. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to talk to you today, is just your journey is just getting started.
I appreciate that. I just try to take it one project at a time, one story at a time, but it means a lot, and your support, that means a lot. Thank you.
I love how humble you are. So let's we're going to get to some really fun, sexy, creative things that you've already done. We're going to talk about here in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I want to back up and start when you were in high school.
Okay.
And if I understand it correctly, you decided to drop out of high school.
That's right. Yeah, I essentially grew up playing music, played in bands and wrote songs, and was sort of like living the rock and roll life in a way. And I recorded my first CD.
A rebel.
Yeah, a little bit. Recorded my first CD in Tennessee when I was 13. And by the time I was 14, I sort of fell in love with film music, writing music for movies, and composers like Hans Zimmer and John Williams, and sort of fell in love with that. And so I would go to school, and I would come home from school, and I would just spend up until 1, 2 in the morning just writing music, studying orchestration and all this stuff. And I would go to school, and my homework wasn't done, and it was just sort of like chaos because I wasn't fitting into the that sort of structure,
the mold
of the standardized education system. And so, after my sophomore year, things were really heating up, and I was sort of wondering, maybe I should just spend full time focusing on music and focusing on what I know I want to do the rest of my life. And I ended up leaving high school and going to study music in Austria that summer. And then I went to New York.
The summer after your sophomore year?
Yeah.
With high school?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And then I did an internship in LA with Hans Zimmer, and also did some workshops in New York City at NYU.
Right, so hang on now. So I want to break this down step by step, because people hear that and they're like, okay, well, that's just some magical wand that just happened. But my guess is there's definitive like the lily pads on a pond, right? You're kind of hopping from lily pad to lily pad, like intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
So I first want to back up to, what was the conversation like with your parents? Was this at the dinner table one night and you said, Mom, Dad, I don't want to do high school anymore? What happened?
So oddly enough, like the strange thing is I don't actually remember one definitive moment. And I think that says something, which is like it felt like in some way we were moving in that direction.
Yeah.
And I sort of knew instinctively, like going into high school for the first day, I just felt like I wasn't going to be here 4 years. I don't know. It wasn't some feeling of like, oh, this place, but it was more of a feeling of like, gosh, I don't know if I can spend 4 years in this sort of like walled in environment. I need to get out. And a lot of my life has always been about trying to get out and put myself in situations that are a little bit vulnerable. And so like when I left high school, the first thing I did was like go by myself to New York for a summer, and then also go to LA. And when eventually I shot my first movie, I decided to go to Poland by myself because I feel like in order to really get results that are interesting, you have to sort of push yourself a little bit. And for me, comfort has always been I don't know. I try to
comfort and chaos.
Yeah, I try to get a little bit of chaos in there to make it interesting.
Awesome. I love it. That's where the best things come out of, right?
Yeah.
Typically.
Yeah.
So the very first trip. So your sophomore, the summer after your sophomore year, the very first trip you took, that was New York or Austria?
That was New York.
That was New York. So what did you go to New York to do? Who'd you pick up the phone and call? Where did you stay?
Yeah.
Like what happened?
I was staying in the freshman dormitory at New York University, and I went to 3 different workshops at NYU for the film scoring, TV scoring, and then also there was basically these different workshops for people that wanted to go into writing music for movies or video games or
You
TV.
just found these online?
Yeah, I found them online. I submitted an application and I went to that. And then right after that, I went on a flight to LA and did a 2-week internship at Hans Zimmer's studio.
And did you learn about that when you were in New York?
I learned about it when I was actually still in school.
Okay.
So it was one of those things where I reached out and I didn't know what the internship was going to consist of, but I wanted to be in that environment and just sort of be able to observe. And it was interesting because I went from NYU, which was very technical. It was hands-on. You're dealing with professors. You're working on scoring scenes, and they're looking at your versions of the film scene with the music that you've written, which was incredible. We were doing versions of Mission Impossible and the Bourne Identity series and had the scene without the music and had to score it. And then from that point, going to LA and being sort of at the very bottom of the totem pole, and just like being in the studio, seeing Hans come into the studio, hearing his sort of low voice, down the halls, and realizing you're in a place where sort of history has been made through all these iconic scores. So it was a cool experience.
So, and for those listeners who may not be familiar with Hans Zimmer, so he's composed music for over 150 films. He has multiple Golden Globes, Grammys. So The Lion King, which I know you reference a lot, is very inspirational for you. Rain Man, Thelma and Louise, Driving Miss Daisy.
Yeah.
When did he first become this idol for you? What was it? Just watching the movie The Lion King as an example, or what was it?
Well, growing up, I loved the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and so the theme, essentially, it's called "He's a Pirate." It's the da da dun dun da dun dun. Just for me, that was iconic. And then growing up, loving Christopher Nolan movies, his music for Inception and Time, that piece of music from that movie, which is used across the board. And it's sort of fun because I listen to, interviews with athletes that talk about listening to that music like before they go out for a big game.
Yeah.
And there's something about this music that is so, just all of the emotions are there. The emotions of ambition, the emotions of happiness, of, exploration. And Interstellar was the one that really did it for me, where I went into the film and I just came out of it like almost changed.
Mine was much more simplistic. Before basketball games, we listened to Thunderstruck.
There you go. Very good.
So you got to this internship, and how long does this last? You got to this internship in LA, but
that was a couple weeks.
2 weeks.
And and then at that point, I was basically out of school for a year, so I had the time to just put in. And what I decided to do was start a YouTube channel, and I founded this series called Behind the Score, where I essentially took individual film scores and then did an entire sort of class on that specific score. So I would create the entire a suite of music, which is basically multiple pieces of music from the movie, in my computer, and I would go through each layer of sound. So what are the strings doing? What is the brass doing? How the music's built? And I would give these hour-long presentations, and I kept that up for a year and sort of tried to build that up. And by the next summer, I went to Austria for.
How many views did you get up to on that?
Well,
YouTube channel?
currently the channel is at about 70,000 subscribers, and so it's a niche kind of channel, and it's a niche subject. But it's been cool because there's been a little community that's been built there, and the people that have come onto it, it's
Do you
been
still
great.
maintain it today?
I still have the channel. Ever since I got into filmmaking, the scheduling has been pretty tough to get in those hour-long videos. But the last one that I did was for the release of Oppenheimer. A couple of years ago.
How if somebody wants to find that, if their son or their daughter is interested in the creative economy, how do they find it?
Yeah, that's on YouTube. Just looking up my name, Ashton Gleckman, and you could also look up the Behind the Score series.
Okay,
and I've done episodes on everything from The Dark Knight to Inception and those kinds of films.
So when you got to this internship with Hans Zimmer, you got to meet him?
I didn't. No, I mean, you're very much so on the bottom of the totem pole, and so you're really just like in the studio.
Are you getting coffee from people as well?
You are. So I remember vividly going into his office for the first time, and it's basically this stunning sort of Victorian-looking office, and he's got like swords from Pirates of the Caribbean, and the helmet from The Last Samurai, and pillows that have stuff from Gladiator. It's just insane. And he's got an entire wall of synthesizers covering the back of the room. And when I was in that room 1 year later, and that was actually when I was going to meet him after we got in touch, I remember just sitting on the couch and almost just being like unable to talk. And I've never been in a situation where like my vocal cords stopped working.
Right.
But when Hans was sitting right there at his desk and I was sitting on the couch, that moment of just.
Is this one-on-one?
This is one-on-one.
And how did that come about?
Because he found the YouTube channel, and I think it was an episode on Inception, and then I did an arrangement of The Dark Knight as well, and he found that, and he thought it would be good for us to meet, and so I flew out to meet him. And it was really cool because I showed up at his studio and he was outside, on a cigarette break. And I saw him and he sort of said my name, like, oh my gosh, he knows my name. He said, Ashton. And we went inside and just talked about music and talked about this industry. And one of the things he said to me at that moment, if nothing else had ever happened, he said to me that moment was just, how old are you? And I said, I just turned 18. And he said, well, don't let age become a factor. It's all about like, can you do the job or can't you do the job? And that sort of stuck with me because a lot of time there's this ageism thing where you're too young or you're too old or, and I've always felt like can you create art? I've seen filmmakers that are 85 years old, 90 years old, and they're making great art. I've seen filmmakers that are in their 20s and they're making great art. And so I think that inspired me a lot where it's like, don't feel restricted by that.
I love that. Amen to that. Shout out to Hans. So this is fascinating. How did you live?
Yeah.
So for that first, let's call it a year or 2 years?
So essentially I was working remotely for Hans's company from Indianapolis for quite a while. And it was about 5-6 months or so. And then eventually I went out to LA to work there in person. And I think after some time in LA, I just realized that there was something more calling for me. I was sort of in a studio all day, every day. You go in when it's dark, you leave in the night when it's dark. And I just realized I was like, I love people and I love working with people and I love meeting people and I want to get out there in the world and see more of it. And the one thing that had always sort of been a love of mine is film. First, film music, but I realized I really want to explore making films and finding stories that really move me. And so I told Hans, I remember calling him on the phone and telling him, I want to go back to Indianapolis for a bit and rethink things and have a go maybe at exploring this avenue because I'm still young, because I can have some time to explore it. And I went back home and I went.
So now this is 19-ish?
This is 2019. Yeah. And I went downtown Indianapolis to Robert's Camera, and I walked in and I said, I want to make a movie. My great uncle was one of the liberators of the Buchenwald concentration camp, and I want to make a movie about the Holocaust, just exploring that history and interviewing survivors and maybe going to Poland for the first time. And they said, well, we'd be happy to rent you a camera for a very small price. Like they were very generous and gave me a Canon cinema camera that I then started just traveling around, raising a little bit of money to do one interview, raising money to do another. And that October, so about 9 months later, the film premiered at the Heartland Film Festival. And I think that experience, I just fell in love with making films and the whole opportunity of meeting people and really spending time with them and working with them on the post-production. And it was a life-changing experience. And at that moment, I realized, like, I need to do this, the rest of my life.
Was that before Kennedy?
That was before Kennedy, yeah.
So when you're producing that, this is as a layman, right?
Yeah.
I don't have the creative brilliance that you have. But as a layman, when I watch things, the story is always important.
Yeah.
But then how you evoke emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I like music is so powerful. I've had the honor to come to your studio.
Yes.
Right. And watch you play around with things. And you showed me how you'll go like 240 layers deep, and maybe sometimes more or less. And you were talking about, grass, wind blowing, et cetera, and all these just different layers of sound. So when you did that first production, then about the Holocaust, how, does it just naturally come to you, or like, are there certain things that inspire you? When you take on that project, you have this one vision in your head, but when you get into it, it takes a different turn.
That's right. And I think that's the big thing with documentaries, is that you let the story take you. You have a general idea of what kind of film you want to make, what story you want to tell. But as you start filming interviews and you start meeting people and they start telling you their stories, you realize, well, this film could go in 10 directions.
Right.
And so ultimately, the film that you end up going with is this very particular journey that you've taken. And the big thing about documentaries that I love so much is that it truly is an adventure of discovery. Because as you're going along, you're finding new documentation, you're finding primary sources. It's sort of like a mixture of investigative journalism with filmmaking, because you're on the ground, you're filming, you're working with crews. You're still working in the editing bay, you're writing the music, but at the same time, you're going to some pretty amazing places to find stuff from history, finding documents and really trying to get closer to, I don't think it's possible to sort of get to the truth, if that's such a thing, but really what a documentary is it's aspiring to a truth and sort of giving yourself fully to it and asking questions.
So what were some moments in that process? So how do you find the first person you're going to interview?
Yeah.
And then take us through a couple of paths that, like, if you hadn't made this one phone call, you wouldn't have discovered this other person, or you wouldn't have gotten to Poland, or like, what are a few of those moments where going the extra inch got you an extra mile?
Well, the first thing I did is I was just looking at books that have been written, and I was reaching out to various historians, and I
just randomly.
Yeah, one of the first.
I'm Ashton.
Exactly, and I had no films to show for myself, and so one of the true amazing people that first responded to this was this guy named Michael Berenbaum, who's this historian that works in L.A., and he's sort of one of the I think one of the true godfathers of modern Holocaust studies. He worked under Raoul Hilberg, this legendary historian. And I flew out there and he took 4 hours to do an interview with me. And I didn't know really what I was doing. I had a camera. I was still learning how to use it. From Robert's camera.
That's awesome.
My sister was with me, making sure that the record button was on. It was not a professional production. It was very much so what you call it sort of guerrilla style, where you are traveling, you're setting up. There's not a lot of time for setups. And at the same time, it was that experience that I loved, because I realized this is what I had been missing in LA, the idea of being with people. And that truly, that aspect changed my life. And another interview that I did on that film that really cemented the fact that this is what I want to do is I went to Florida to interview this guy named Ben Ferencz, who was the last living prosecutor of the Nuremberg trials. And at the time, he was 100 years old. He was still doing push-ups every morning. He had landed on the beaches of Normandy, had fought in the Battle of the Bulge, had went in, and he was this very short Jewish man from New York. And he was going into the concentration camps in a Jeep, going into the SS, documents areas and taking material from these camps, using them during the Nuremberg trials as primary evidence. And he became the youngest prosecutor of essentially the largest murder trial in human history. And I'm sitting there with this man, and I remember him, he literally was 4 feet tall, yet he was the grandest person I've ever met in my life. And I just realized I was looking at history, and I was in the presence of someone who, I don't know, just really showed me what it means to be an amazing person that's really dedicated themselves to one cause. And so this whole experience of the first project, I think, got me on the track of let's keep doing this. Let's keep making films. And
so then that documentary was like 90 minutes, or was it a series?
Yeah, it was about 100 minutes, so 140, and that premiered at the Heartland Film Festival in October 2019.
And then where's that documentary today? What happened to it?
It's on Amazon. So it went on Amazon, and the second film as well, we released The Hills I Call Home with a production company named Gravitas Ventures, a distribution company, and that ended up on video on demand. So that's on iTunes and Amazon as well.
And I can go buy those today. I can go rent it and
those
watch
are
it.
available. Yeah.
What's it called?
We Shall Not Die Now is the first film, and then The Hills I Call Home is the second, and then the one that comes after that is Kennedy.
I love it. Okay, so let's go to Kennedy. So you have your Heartland Film launch party. You walk the red carpet.
Yeah.
All the fun stuff. And then and Heartland is like one of the top film festivals in the world, right? Like top 20 or something?
Yeah, it was really cool because it was the first time meeting filmmakers from all over.
Right.
I mean, it was the first film festival I went to in general, but it was cool because there were filmmakers from England and from all over, and they all were here in Indiana. So I remember just that whole experience of like spending time with them.
Yeah.
And right after that, you got to remember COVID starts. This is 2020. So right after that film premieres, I was going to make my second film, The Hills I Call Home, in this tiny little town in Appalachia. And it was basically this telling of this little community, which is one of the most economically distressed areas of the country. But I wanted to make a film that documented who these people are and how they live their lives and what it means to be perhaps economically struggling, but still at the same time have an incredible amount of resilience and dedication to each other. And so I went out there very early stages of COVID when we were all safe and made that film, and then spent the rest of the year editing it and doing music, and it came out early the next year.
That's awesome. So Kennedy, where did you get the inspiration for Kennedy?
Oh,
before we dive into this, maybe quick preface on what Kennedy's all about.
Yeah. So it's essentially the full life story of President John F. Kennedy. And my whole idea with it from the very beginning was let's tell the full story, all the way from his birth in 1917 during the First World War all the way to 1963 when he was assassinated. And I really wanted to spend essentially half of the whole production in his early years looking at how he developed into the person he became. And then for the second half, going into the sort of the micro of the day-to-days of the administration, looking at all of the things that were going on from the Cold War, the space race, and looking at the way that his administration had an impact. And so the thing ended up starting as maybe doing a film, and then it turned into 4 parts, and then it turned into 10 parts, and then it came down to 8 parts. And it was this big evolution of a project. But my original rough cut of it was 14 hours because there was so much material. Mm-hmm. And it just kept growing and growing and growing. And then eventually we got it all the way down to what it became, which is the sort of the 8-hour documentary that it is.
So how many people are involved on the team when you're doing this, and where do you find those people? Because you're still bootstrapping really at this point, right?
Yes, I had no production company that was attached to it, that was putting money into it. I had no distribution platform where I knew it was going to be playing. It was literally me. I went out and tried to put some money together through local investors, and I found a crew of 2 other people, a cinematographer and an assistant camera, and we rented a van and drove around the East Coast and literally went from interview to interview. And that's all we had is a van. We stayed in the same hotel room. Sometimes we were eating dinner. We would go to the Dollar General and get things from there and bring it back to the hotel. Like, we literally
What
were.
was your favorite thing to eat from Dollar General?
I'm sure there were some sort of lean cuisines that were quite phenomenal. But the thing was, we were making a certain amount of money work for 100 interviews, almost 100 interviews. And that project, I ended up taking those interviews, going back home, and then producing and cutting the entire rough cut myself. And eventually landing that in the lap of a company in New York, and they worked together with me to eventually sell the thing. So
Who did you sell it to?
Sold it to the History Channel, which is amazing because I got to actually present it in the room with a lot of these different companies, and we showed it to a lot of the streaming platforms, showed it to the TV networks, and the History Channel, I think, really saw something in it and saw this is an opportunity to explore a certain element of the story which isn't often explored. So often with JFK, it's about the assassination, it's about Dallas, and I think what the film is trying to do is look at the grand adventure of this life, and also someone who's very three-dimensional and very flawed, but at the same time has a really incredible position in history, and still, I think, inspires a lot of people.
That's what I think is interesting about that. Kennedy's been well covered.
Yeah.
He's kind of popular.
Yeah.
Kind of famous. Well covered.
Yeah.
And yet you think there's a story that this is what I love about life, right? Whenever we think something's been well done or there's nothing else to do there's always another angle, right?
Yeah.
And so do you think that when, how do I say this? Like, do you think that you're thriving in chaos? You haven't been in the industry for 20 years and you it's just this, I'm just going to go crush the world.
100%. It was totally reckless. It was totally reckless. If I had known going into it what was going to be a part of it, we filmed in like 25 states, and it was at one point just chaotic because we were flying from here to there to there.
Yeah.
We didn't have a return flight, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to get all this equipment on the plane. There was no plan. There's no blueprint for it. You have to just jump into the deep end. If I had known that going in, I might have been intimidated.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I learned with Kennedy was sometimes just jump in, do it. If you really feel strongly about a project, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's you want to write a book or you want to make a documentary or you want to play a certain sport and get really good at it and try to go for the big team. Like, it's really just about being a little bit reckless and maybe a little bit too, and I wouldn't even call it confident or cocky, because I've never had a great level of confidence. I've had a great level of curiosity that's just like driven me to want to keep trying.
That word is so powerful.
Yeah, keep trying to get better, keep trying to look into the story further, and that's what's driven all the films forward.
I love it. So what do you work on now? So after Kennedy, because that's just what are you, 24? How old are you
I'm
now?
25, just turned
25.
Yeah.
Happy birthday. That was recent?
Oh, that was in August. So
okay.
A few months ago, yeah.
So so you're 25. So Kennedy, you sold that, went to History Channel at when was that?
That was released in November 2023.
23.
And at that point, I started working on my next film, which is called The Quiet Village, which we just finished. We did the mix in Air Studios in London, and we did the color grade in Austria. And I'm really excited about this film because it's a very personal story about a very unknown aspect of World War II, of the Holocaust, that we were able to uncover. And we filmed it in 6 different countries, spoke to everybody from descendants of Nazi perpetrators to the children of a camp that had only 6 survivors out of 152,000 people. And so it was, again, a project that pushed me way further than Kennedy did in terms of into uncharted territory. Because Kennedy was a project where the history was, you could find answers looking in books. You could find answers looking in secondary sources, for instance, even though we were going to primary sources. But with this film, a lot of the history was buried in archives in Poland and Germany. So we needed translators. We needed to go to the source. And we were able to get Liev Schreiber, who's an incredible guy and really amazing voice, to narrate it. And so we recorded with him in February this year, and I've been in the cutting room all year putting it together. And again, that project came down from 5 hours in the initial rough cut to the hour and 43 that it is right now.
Wow. And that was, I'm going to mispronounce it, Kulmhof.
Kulmhof, yeah, it's the first Nazi extermination camp that was built in this tiny little Polish
The very
village.
first one that they ever did.
Yes, and the amazing legacy of how important this camp is, and it's unbelievable, is that this was essentially the beginning of the Holocaust. This is the beginning. It's a horrifying place because it is essentially where they constructed the first techniques of industrialized mass murder that was then taken and used in places like Auschwitz or Treblinka or Sobibor. And it's this tiny little village in the middle of the Polish countryside with an old mansion house and a church. And it's a story that haunted me for the entire period of making the film, and constantly asked me to wonder, can we get this film made? But we had such an amazing team of researchers in Berlin, the crew, the cinematographer who's from Poland, and we just hunkered down, worked together, set up base in Europe, and began work on it.
And this story either has not been told or has not been told in depth.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about in the past. Is that
it's certainly a largely untold aspect of history, and certainly of the Holocaust. And there has not been a documentary specifically focused on this subject of this place since the events occurred, since the camp, the Soviets went into the area of the camp in 1945. So it was essentially going back, and it was a very investigative project from that perspective of just looking. And it's when you are working on a project like this, when we were on site in Poland, and I remember we were walking through the forest, and the historian that we were with was pointing out on the forest floor that there were still bone fragments there today. And it was so moving because, again, we were walking around this area, and you realize that you're walking in an area that is still affected by history. And it doesn't matter where you go, where these things happened, the history is still there. Another example of this is we were filming Kennedy, and we were filming interviews in Birmingham, where, the Birmingham Children's Crusade took place in 1963. And I had the opportunity to interview 8 survivors and participants of the Birmingham Children's Crusade. And in the middle of the park where this took place, there are those large monuments of the police dogs and then the fire hoses. And you realize that in this exact place is where this happened. And I think that's the thing about history, is that history does not leave these places. It is there. And I don't see history as being this thing that just happened. History is really happening, through all of us. And by going back and looking at it, it's a way of sort of confronting it, and I think coming a little closer to who we are in a way.
Do you find in some of these situations that you mentioned, like, these things are buried in archives and it's hard to get primary or secondary sources, that you run into situations where people don't want the story to be told?
Of course. Yeah. And a lot of times it could be for many reasons. I mean, it could be for reasons where you might have someone who's related to the crime that doesn't want, but that's not as much of what I've run into. Because you're dealing with sensitive topics. You're dealing with topics that do bring back difficult memories, and people have different ways of coping with trauma, of coping with things that have happened in the past. And oftentimes it's difficult to return to those places, which is why for The Quiet Village, we had the opportunity to speak with a remarkable man. His name is Jens Vinsky. His father was a major Nazi war criminal who was involved in the story that we were telling. And he made the decision to come and meet us in Munich. We filmed the interview at the former headquarters of the Nazi Gestapo in Munich. And he opened up completely, spoke about his entire life, spoke about discovering the fact of what his father was a part of confronting it, of going to Poland for the first time and facing it. It is not something that he had to do. It's something he chose to do, to confront that own family history. And I had a lot of respect for the fact that he was able to, and he speaks in schools. And but it really depends. It's a difficult journey for each project. And I think for every single person who's bringing up an aspect of their lives that is difficult, they approach it in a different way. And part of your job as a filmmaker is to respect that and to allow them to go where they feel comfortable and go with them. each interview is a very personal experience between you two. And you don't ever want to push in areas that are not comfortable. You want to let it sort of flow naturally.
You're giving me chills sitting here talking about this. It's just amazing. It's so important. Like if we don't remember our history anywhere across the globe, honestly and authentically,
Mm-hmm.
with I guess I'll say at least as close to the facts as we can get, with what information is available, then the risk of history repeating itself, or atrocities to continue, is just too great, and we can't let that happen as humans.
Right. And you especially face that in an era where the whole idea of, getting rid of certain books or getting rid of certain, things that are not convenient to a narrative, that becomes a serious problem, because then that starts to literally distort history and revise it. And as soon as that starts happening, you're right, you literally run into a cycle where it repeats itself if you don't confront it. And I think that what a lot of filmmakers that I grew up admiring and that I continue to admire, what they're doing is they're asking questions of the audience. They're putting things in front of you and asking, are you willing to confront this part of human nature? And I think that's really important for us as we continue to grow and everything. It's just to be open. And I think it makes us stronger. It makes us better to confront these things and embrace them and understand this thing did happen. And, going forward, if we keep that in mind, it just makes us, I think, better people.
You've had, goodness, how many interviews you've done already in the last, 10 years?
Yeah.
Is insane.
Yeah.
Are there any common threads or common denominators that you found, I'll ask kind of on both sides, that keeps people from just opening up and just letting it out? What prevents that from happening? Have you seen common threads? And then on the other side, have you seen anything that has been more successful in allowing that person, maybe not the right word, enabling that person to let it out?
It's a great question. I mean, the biggest thing for me on interviews is research and preparedness, but then sort of putting that to the side a little bit for the actual interview. And so oftentimes when I'm preparing for an interview, for example, on Kennedy, there was something like 85 interviews that we did for that. And some of them are, of course, with historians or biographers, but some of them are with, people like in Birmingham, or people who are Bay of Pigs veterans we spoke to in Miami. And so the level of preparedness is different depending on the background. But it's always, you want to make sure that you know the ins and the outs of the story and the direction it could go in. But at the same time, I think the worst thing that I could do in an interview is go in knowing exactly what I want, from the interviewee. It's never like that. It's more of, the story, the outline, and then you want to see where the story will take you. And I write up a lot of interview questions when I go into an interview, and then oftentimes I forget to look at it because you get into the flow of a conversation. Right. Like we're doing now. Yeah. And it's just, you begin to go on. And that's often where it gets the most human. It gets the most comfortable. And I've always felt as well that it's the little moments of silence, never just getting immediately back into a question and letting them have a little bit of time. Sometimes that's where the very important and vulnerable moments that come about in those moments. So I think it's really being patient, and it's just listening. It's being a listener and being empathetic to that person.
When are you hoping to release this documentary?
We are hoping to premiere it on the film festival circuit early next year. So we've started submissions for that. Yep. And so hopefully next summer we could get it released widely. And I'm looking forward to sharing it. It's been a moving personal project, and I'm proud of the work that all the crew has done on it as well.
So what do you think about next? Do you already have your next projects in the back of your mind? Or are they already starting to manifest themselves?
I have the two I want to make. And one of them is a very archive-driven project. And then one of them is similar to The Quiet Village, a much more investigative project where it's going to sort of on the ground, firsthand witnesses, and a bit more of a a story that is confronting in that way. And so I'm working on developing both of them, and I'm planning on
Are
making
those
them.
top secret right now? Or
Yeah, they're
or the topics in general, or
yes, they're both in development. I will definitely share more when they come about. But I like both projects a lot because they're both touch on different aspects of the human experience. One of them is driven towards art and music and that aspect of it, and the role that it has in our lives of bringing us together. And then another one approaches, like The Quiet Village, subjects that are on the darker end of things, but say a lot about what it means to be human and the things that we run into in that.
I love it. So let's go to the business side a little bit. I want to talk about kind of like the business side, the democratization of technology, et cetera, and then also what we might want to share with our educators in terms of encouraging students, et cetera. So, pause real quick. Was that 5 already?
Yeah, we're at 40 right now.
Good night. Okay. All right. Holy moly. It's awesome. That's how we get deep right there. I mean, I was so deep in there. It's crazy. Okay. So let's dive into the business side for a moment, because I had several conversations with folks involved in the creative economy. And what I think is fascinating is we used to go to the movies, and at least my perception was back in the day, and I don't even know when that was, 10 to 20 to 30 and 40 years ago, film producers made their money, you're selling at Blockbuster or whatever, right? They're getting all these residuals that show up in mailboxes.
Yeah.
You sold Kennedy to the History Channel. I think it was just lump sum done.
Yeah.
Where's the industry headed? Like, so is there, are there avenues for residual, right? Or how's the industry working from that standpoint?
From a purely technical level, a lot of the industry is moving towards a direction of buyouts because, I mean, financially, it's a more feasible option for the distributor. Because essentially you're not having to deal with a licensing model, you're not having to deal with this kind of thing. TV shows that still appear on Netflix or on streamers are still using a licensing model because they're owned by a separate entity. Yep. But even then, you have that old model sort of disappearing because a show like The Office that would have been licensed to Netflix is going back to NBC or Peacock. So oftentimes right now you are dealing with the buyout model. And so, and of course, the industry is constantly changing and constantly modulating. And so a project that might sell really easily in January might be really difficult to sell in July. And it changes that fast. And so the thing that I've found is that there's no be all end all answer to, for example, film distribution and that kind of model. It's incredibly hard to fit in any project, no matter what the subject is. And there's certain subjects that will sell easier, quote unquote, but to get a project in that is a little bit different, that is a little bit unique, that might be a bigger risk for streamers or a bigger risk for certain executives, it's tough. All that I can really do is just try to make a good film and try to make a film that I really care about and really feel good about. And that's where your control ends, And so that's the biggest thing. It's just find something that you can dedicate 2 years of your life to do and try to do it the best you can. And, but that's the direction it's going in general.
Do you think we'll replace actors and actresses with AI? There's already been a few personas put out there.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I will say this, I feel very strongly, because I'm a member of the Directors Guild, for instance, and I know that the Screen Actors Guild spent a lot of time working out the various language as it relates to AI with actors. And I will say that I'm very proud of the work that they did in preserving the integrity of real human beings.
Right.
AI is developing so fast, and there are certainly industries and where it could be helpful. I absolutely believe so. We've already seen it, for example, in medical, how it's been very helpful, or in various other avenues. But I strongly feel like as AI continues to develop, what's actually going to happen is it's going to boomerang back, and it's going to remind us of what it means to be human and what art means to be created by human.
Yeah.
So the more that AI continues to get better, the more we're going to continue to look back at ourselves, and you're going to start to maybe see art get to new heights.
Yeah.
People striving to new heights. So I think that AI, it's going to continue, but I don't think people are going anywhere, and people created art is going anywhere.
Right.
And I might be ignorant on that, but I feel so strongly, and I want to continue to defend with everything I can. People created art.
I love it. So, what tools have you used yourself, and what do you see coming down the pike? That, because the flip side of that, all this technology that we have helps the democratization of people like you, right? Being able to do all these amazing things that we couldn't do maybe even 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Or for sure like 20, 30 years ago. So what are some of your favorite tools that you've come across that help you to compose, and what's a score? Is that a piece of...
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I use, I mean, when writing the scores for my films, because I still score all my own films and still love writing music, is this started back in the 1990s, especially with Hans and a lot of the things that he was doing, but recording what we call samples, which are essentially individual notes that every instrument plays, and you literally play each note, and you could assign those notes to a keyboard. And so I can essentially program, an entire orchestra, and then infuse that with synthesizers and sound design and create the entire orchestral score in a computer. Now again,
you showed me you were literally playing the guitar on the keyboard.
Yeah, exactly. And again, if you have the budget, if you have the availability, you eventually always want to try to replace that with live musicians. But recording in a beautiful hall like Abbey Road or Air Studios with the London Symphony Orchestra is not financially feasible for most people or most productions. And so you learn very quickly in this industry as a film composer that you need to learn how to program music pretty well in a computer. And so early on, a lot of my trying to get better was just trying to figure out how to get a handle on programming. And that's where Hans and his methods that he developed were really helpful. And so I think that's the biggest technology, because still to this day, a lot of the music that I do, it's me programming every note in the computer using MIDI keyboards and samples and that kind of thing.
Fascinating. All right, we are going to get to the rapid fire round here in just a moment. But I have one more question about like K through 12 education.
Yeah.
And with what you went through, and now that you're kind of out of that for roughly a decade, and you obviously interact with lots of folks from across the globe, what do you think? How do we disrupt our K through 12 education to let our next generation be themselves, play to their strengths, and get out of this rows and columns? We're going to do it this way because that's the way we always have done it concept?
I think the biggest thing is truly to play into curiosity, because this is the thing, is that I strongly feel, for example, if history is not interesting to a student in school, it's because it's not being taught in an interesting way. When all you're doing is teaching a student how to reiterate a list of names or reiterate a list of places or a list of battles just so that they can get a good grade on a test and show that they're able to study, you don't get very far in creating curiosity. You get sort of a resentment towards the very memorization of the list of 20 things.
Yeah.
So I think that telling or helping kids understand what is the actual importance of these events, of these moments, and how can these things actually make a difference in our lives, and playing into curiosity and using film. I mean, film is an incredible avenue for art, for discovery of certain themes and ideas. And so I think films have a huge role, and it's been really cool to screen a couple of my films in schools and see the reaction that they have, and actually bring in a Holocaust survivor to the school so that they can speak to him and ask him questions. And so things like that make a big difference, I think. I mean, because we all know, like, we were all in school. We know it's a difficult time, and everyone's going through like huge changes in their lives. And I think the biggest thing that schools can do is be more open, also to different career paths. Not everyone is going to be the lawyer. I mean, we need the lawyers. We absolutely need the doctors And those people are the real heroes. I mean, those are the people that are changing lives every day. And I just make movies. But I do think that for the kid, you know, in the middle of Iowa who maybe wants to be a filmmaker or maybe wants to pursue documentaries or wants to be an athlete or wants to be a writer, you know, supporting that and knowing that everyone doesn't always fit into the boxes of standardized education, and just being open to different avenues.
I love that. My personal dream, like in doing Innovate or Evaporate, for example, like with this episode, is that someday we hear about some kid in Iowa who somehow received this through some windy path, and an aunt or an uncle or somebody happened to share it, and it sparked a moment of, well, I'm just going to go after it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's something that Hans said, and he said, you know, I just want some kid in a garage in the Bronx to come up with the best idea, you know, on their laptop.
Right.
And I think it's totally possible. And, you know, we've seen things like that happen. And so continuing to support that kind of, you know, creative, I think that's a huge thing.
We had Daryl McDaniels, Run DMC.
Yeah.
The DMC
Yeah.
in Run DMC.
Yeah.
And on Innovate or Evaporate, he was in town during the WNBA. I was blown away by him. And I never, I think he considers himself not considers himself, like he is a poet, like poetry.
Yeah.
And then of course he has the skill set to like bring it to life. But I was just blown away. And he described how he first, like there was it a cassette, or I can't remember what it was, on the playground. And when one of his friends, like, you have to listen to this. And then how it all started is just fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
And so now we can have 1 million Daryl McDaniels pop up.
Oh, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And that kind of creative ingenuity and the ability, now we have softwares where you can do it all on your laptop. Again, like free softwares as well.
Yeah.
I started out on a program called GarageBand where I was using the built-in virtual instruments to try to create versions of film scores that I was hearing. And it's cool how the technology is out there, and you've got iPhones now that are filming like this beautiful 4K footage. The new iPhones, the quality has just sort of gone up and up, and things have become more accessible. It also makes it more that anyone could do it, so it becomes more, I guess, quote unquote competitive. But I don't see the whole competitiveness. I think each and every person has a story to tell, and it doesn't matter who they are, they're going to find a way to get that told. And it doesn't matter, like you were saying, whether it's a rapper, a poet, a songwriter, a filmmaker, you know, it's all avenues of expression. And really what technology has allowed us to do is just give more people an opportunity to do it.
I love it. You ready for the rapid run?
Rapid round. Let's do it.
So one word, a sentence, whatever.
Yeah.
It can be anything, whatever comes to mind, just blurt it out. We get some fascinating responses to these. So here we go.
Yeah.
What is one thing in your industry that you think people should stop doing?
Ooh, that's a great question. Stop doing. Don't be too cautious. Don't be too cautious. Don't fall into the formulas. You know, we know the formulas. We go to the movies and we see the formulas. We see them all the time. And audiences, let me tell you, audiences are the smartest people because they know the formulas. They go in there and they expect something, a new story, an experience. And I think just having a little bit more trust in the audience goes a long way.
I love it. What is one thing, or a process or a habit, what's one thing that you think leads to the best ability to disrupt yourself?
I do think it's that word, the curiosity. I think just really driving into that word. And whenever you feel like you have an answer, it really is just another question that keeps you digging further in. It was like that with Kennedy, where every time I thought like, oh, I've gotten to then there was more. I was coming across more documents, more things that continued to. So I think that's the biggest thing, is really just continuing to follow the whole idea of curiosity.
That makes me think of the 5 whys.
Yeah.
Right? Just keep asking why. Well, why?
Yeah.
If you could solve one problem in the world with innovation, If you could solve one problem in the world with innovation, what would it be?
That's a great question. Honestly, I think the biggest thing that I've seen films be able to do, and I'm just going to talk about films because that's the thing that I'm in, is for a person who's struggling in life or going through a difficult period, people that I've talked to that have been able to see a film that has somehow captured their imagination.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what the film is, but they go into it and they come out with a little bit more energy, a little bit more, love of life or love of whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. That's it. So I guess I'm more just talking to the power of movies and storytelling to really have an impact on people's lives. And I hope that maybe people that haven't seen as many films will have the opportunities to, because I know there's certain parts of the world where, of course, movie theaters are not accessible and movies are hard to get.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely, but I just hope that films can continue to have that kind of an impact, and people can continue to find them.
I love it. Is there anything that you're passionate about that we haven't touched on today?
Oh, gosh.
That one thing you want everybody to know?
Other than, let's see, cats and Coldplay and coffee. The 3 C's. We've pretty much hit on everything.
All of it. I love it. I have learned a ton. This has been absolutely fascinating. For all of our listeners out there, how can they find more about your work? What's your website?
Yeah, my website is just my name, AshtonGleckman.com, and I'm on Instagram, and the website for my production company is blackbirdpictures.net.
And then if I want to go rent and watch some of those documentaries, I can go. Which ones are they, and where can I go?
Yeah, they're all on video on demand. So anywhere where you find your films, whether it's Apple TV or Amazon, it's all available on there. And
which ones can I rent?
Yes, all of them.
All of them.
All of them are available.
We'll leave some titles off just because people
Kennedy.
might have
So the Hills I Call Home, We Shall Not Die Now, and then Kennedy is the most recent. And then next year, hopefully, you'll be seeing The Quiet Village as well.
So awesome. That's 4 already?
That's 4 already, and 2 in development. So
wow.
Yeah. And each time you finish one, you're like, okay, I can keep striving to make it better. So I'm always looking forward to the next one and the next one. Who was it? It was Hitchcock that said at the end of making each project, and he says, oh, I get bored with this project, and then I'm on to the next one already before it's finished editing. But truly, I think each project just reminds you of why you love it so much, why you love the craft of filmmaking so much, and you just want to keep doing it. So I'm just going to keep following, seeing wherever it takes me.
That's amazing. Ashton, thank you for joining us on Innovate or Evaporate. So for everyone out there, Ashton Gleckman, moving hearts, minds, and souls literally on the global stage. It has been an honor to have you on the show today. It's been an honor to be here, and I really, really thank you for having me. Absolutely. Thanks a lot. All right, we'll see you soon on Innovate or Evaporate.
This episode was brought to you by Rally, the Global Cross-Sector Innovation Conference. Learn more at rallyinnovation.com.